I'm an educator. Never would have imagined that I would ever be one. I mean, the chances of me doing that were off even before I was born. You see, I had a 0.01% chance of even existing. I always imagined that God had this big Excel sheet in the sky and he somehow messed up the calculations. So he had one column for non-existence, one column for existence, and he put an extra number in here. And so this conversation with Earth and God, and Earth says, but why? Why another human being? And God says, it's just another 1 in 7 billion, you can keep it. And sometimes I wish this is how my bank account worked. Like, here, have 1 million, enjoy it. Don't worry about it, you can keep it. But I can dream, right? And so I often looked at my life as this statistical error, an anomaly, or an outlier. But my parents saw me differently. They saw me as a miracle, and they named me Nathaniel, meaning the gift of God. But I always felt like this outlier, and I couldn't shake this feeling. Because as a kid, I felt like the other kids couldn't understand or couldn't see that the world was imperfect and that there was so much suffering in the world. They seemed to be so happy, yet I seemed to be so troubled. And it was almost like I had this secret that I'd learned too early, that the world was imperfect. And so as a kid, it's so simple to think that the world is perfect, right? You have chocolate, you have cake, you have cookies, you can cry to get anything you want. What more could be better? And so I tried this the other day. I strategically sat down in one corner. My bank account was empty. So I cried, bawled my eyes out, opened them, closed them, and magic. No, it didn't work. I was still broke. I still had no money in my account. And so as I grew up, I started to realize that things were changing. Crying no longer stopped working. It didn't work for me. And cracks began to form in this perfect world of mine. And so I remember when I was 10, I traveled to Myanmar with my family. We were at this restaurant and we were eating a delicious meal. We, like every Asian family, ordered 5 to 6 different dishes. It was so great. Such a delicious meal, I can still remember it. And me and my brother back then, we were on a strict seafood diet. So we seafood, we eat it. So 5 to 6 dishes was nothing, and we were eating. I can remember I was eating until I started to feel sleepy. You know when you eat so much that you fall into this like food coma? That was basically us. And my stomach had expanded 4 times the regular size of a normal human being, but I kept going on, soldiering on. I wanted to be this food, but we lost. And so I said, okay, I'll come back for you later. But we ended up not being able to finish our food on the table, and we had leftovers. Normally we would put this in takeaway, but this one time we didn't. And so we left the food on the table and we walked out of the restaurant. As we were walking out, I remember so distinctly turning behind, and to my shock, I saw all the waiters, each and every one from the restaurant, had rushed to our table, sat down and started eating our meal. And they were eating it like it was the best meal that they had ever had. And I was disgusted. At 10 years old, I didn't understand why these waiters couldn't afford to buy their own meals, why they couldn't use the money that they had just earned to buy a warm meal, not filled with somebody else's saliva. And so I was disgusted. And it wasn't until later that I realized the luxury that I had. I didn't realize that it was a luxury to come home, to have warm food on the table, to have a roof over my head, to have a warm bed to sleep on. I didn't realize all of these things. And so I began to grasp this concept of suffering as my world seemed to crumble before my eyes. I remember so distinctly that I fell into this pit of sadness. Every night I would cry myself to sleep because I didn't understand. And I was later diagnosed with clinical depression and anxiety. And this followed me. This followed me so much, and it had such a big effect on me that I remember one time I came home from school and I told my parents I'm going to drop out. And so this was normal. Who doesn't want to drop out? Like a 10, 11-year-old kid coming back from primary school might say something like, Mom, I hate my homework. English, math, science, none of this is relevant to my future. Why do I have to keep studying? I'm going to drop out. But I was different. I didn't want to drop out because of that. I wanted to drop out so I could fly to Myanmar, so I could help these people, donate all of my time and donate all of my money and life savings to them. But my life savings, my $100 or $200 at the time wasn't enough, and so my sensible parents told me that. And they suggested instead, if you really care, why don't you study hard, work hard, get a good job, and make sure that you go back and donate to those people in Myanmar in a few years. But I wasn't happy with that. But with my $100 or $200 in the bank, there wasn't much I could do anyway. And so I stayed in school. This frustration within me continued to grow. And in high school, I decided I was going to make a difference. We had a lot of different clubs in high school. We had the environment club, mental health, global issues, education. And so I thought that if I joined one of these and helped out, this was my way of making a difference in the community. So I did. I applied. I got rejected. I sent out 17 different applications to every captain you can imagine. School captain, environment captain, well-being captain. And I became the captain of rejection. Yeah, so I was rejected from half of the 17 things that I applied to. More than half of them. So for the half of them that I was accepted to, I went in, I volunteered my time, and I contributed. But I still felt like it wasn't enough. There were other things that I was passionate about that I didn't see within my school environment. And so when the door slammed into my face with rejection, I walked out of those doors and I created new ones. I saw the gaps in my environment and I created my own opportunities. I created 3 different clubs, one in entrepreneurship, one in Model UN, and one in social change. And at the time I didn't know much about any of these, but I knew that each of these had a huge potential to make an impact. So that's why I was so interested in each and every one of them. And so I created these, and this social change club, we named it Future Minds. We decided to run a conference for Future Minds. And the topic was how to make a difference in the world as a young person. You see, this statement had plagued me for so long. I still hadn't cracked it yet. From primary school as a 10-year-old to high school, I still felt like I couldn't make a difference in the world because I didn't know how. I felt helpless to shape my own story, to go out and support another person and help them shape theirs. I felt powerless in our society, which tells us that young people are the next leaders of tomorrow. But rarely gives us the opportunity to actually realize our own potential. And so we did this conference, and this conference turned into a 2-month hackathon. It was a hackathon where we created solutions to the problems that we saw in the world. We had ideas from a riverside cleanup that tackled clean water and sanitation in local communities, all the way to an idea that recycled old, ugly fruit into skincare and cosmetics. And this hackathon turned into a pitch night where we pitched our solutions to the CEO of World Vision Australia. And this all came from me taking a chance. It came from me taking a chance, not knowing anything about these fields, but being willing to jump into them anyway. I had faith that surely I wasn't the only one who felt this way, and I was right. We gathered 100 students in 5 different high schools, and we ran that event. And since then, I've been able to work with 11,000 young people who've turned into future founders, innovators, investors, and change makers. And we've used entrepreneurship as this medium to create the change that we want to see in the world. But not only that, we get to learn key skills for the future of work, like communication and pitching, and financial literacy and business modeling. And we get to create our own jobs for the future in an economy which is uncertain. Entrepreneurship became such a powerful medium for this. And now outside of this, I mentor early stage startups in different corners of the world. I'm really lucky to be able to help these founders grow and scale their startups. One of the most interesting things I found actually in entrepreneurship is that it has a lot to do with taking chances. So when you talk to a venture capitalist, so a private investor who invests money into startups in exchange for equity, some of the big 5 things they look for are the problem, the solution, the market opportunity, traction, and team. And within the team, they look at the founder, the people who surround the founder. Within the founder, they look at the resilience. How willing are they to get back up again after they've fallen to the ground, whether they've been met by failure? What does their mindset look like? And most of all, they look at pathological optimism. And so what this is this courage and this optimism to keep going even though you know success is almost impossible and failure is inevitable. It's a courage to continue to improve and reiterate a product or service even when you know you will fail hundreds and hundreds of times. And this optimism is not an ignorance of risk or ignorance of the complexities of business, but rather an optimism that you will get there at the end because you know you will put your 100% into it. At its core, it's an acknowledgement first and foremost that failure is inevitable. And so in our life, in the journey of life, failure is inevitable. Whatever you do, you will fail. And sometimes, most of the time actually, you won't know what you're doing. You won't know why you're doing it. And you won't have all the answers. And that's okay. See, the funny thing about failure is if you are failing, that in itself is a good thing. It's a great thing because that means you're actually trying. That means that the fact that you're failing means you can fall down and get up again. It means you can fall down and learn from your mistakes. But if you aren't failing, you're failing to fail. And so that is failure too. So either way you will fail, but one has a 50% chance of success and one has a chance of 0. So I always thought that I couldn't make a difference because I didn't know how. But over the years I realized I didn't need to because there is no right answer. There is no test. You know, when life threw lemons at me, sour things that I didn't enjoy, I threw lemons back at life and grew my own lemon trees. You have the power to shape your own story. You know, we're talking a lot about chances today. We're talking a lot about chances, and it's so funny because the chance of you existing, actually, is 1 in 10 to the power of 2,685,000. So that's 10 with 2 million zeros after it. That's a chance of 2 million different people getting together in one room to play a dice game with a trillion-sided dice, and each of you getting 550,182,112 as a number, for example. And so the very chance that you are alive is 1, a miracle. But 2, a unique chance that life has given you to take control of your own story. You here have won the birth lottery. You here have had a chance and by chance gotten into the school that you've gotten into, been able to come to this talk and listen to what I'm saying, and been able to exist. These things are all a unique chance that life has given us. You have won the birth lottery. You should know now that you can do a lot more than just make a difference in the world. If you want to, you can be that difference. Thank you.